This show is sponsored by Drobo, a family of safe, expandable, yet simple-to-use storage arrays. Drobos are designed to protect your important data forever. Visit www.drobo.com to learn more.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 184, Galaxy's Child.
Welcome into Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, I fire up the old Kentron 1000 and pretend to discuss an episode of Star Trek with the real Ken Ray, who I'm hoping to meet someday. He's dreamy. In the meantime, the Kentron 1000 and I look at the messages, morals, and meanings of a given episode of Star Trek and figure out whether it holds up as the years roll by.
This week, Galaxy's Child, the one where the Enterprise delivers and re-delivers a space baby. And Geordi meets the real woman behind his holographic fantasies. In a moment, John will hit some episode-specific trivia, but first, I'm going to tell you how to get in touch with us. Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love for you to do so. Our phone number is 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents and pictures and comments and all kinds of things, is missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. Now, I had said that in a moment you're going to do trivia, but first, we're going to talk about Drobo.
I can't wait to talk about Drobo.
Okay. Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
I want you to start, Ken.
Okay. All right. Here's what I'll tell you about a Drobo. At its base, and this is true for all of them, Drobo is a great way to back up data. Depending on which model you get, there's room for 4 or 5 drives in a Drobo. Now, one of those, at least, is going to be for backup. The other 3 or 4 can be for backup if you want them to be. That's up to you. So, like, if you're, I don't want to say paranoid, but if you're worried about your backup drive crapping out on you, that's okay. Because if you have a second one that's mirroring the first one, then one of those can die. You've still got all of your data backed up. But again, it's up to you on how much you want to devote to, protecting or backing up your data as opposed to using it for extra storage, which you can, of course, do as well. Now, there's this other really cool thing that all of the Drobos do, even down to the Mini, that I think is really impressive. They've got this way to protect data that's in transit. So let's say you're using your Drobo largely for storage that's not going to live on your computer. You've been working on an image, and it's great, and the image is going over to your Drobo, and that's fantastic, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you have a power failure. You haven't lost that data, even if it hasn't made it all the way to the drive in the Drobo, because they basically got a way to catch it on the way in kind of like a cache and make sure that it stays there safe until power comes back on and it goes ahead and completes the transition. And it's that kind of protection of data. It's that kind of attention to, the different things that might happen or the different things that might go wrong that make Drobo kind of cool from an operational side. Now,
I'll just straight up call it magic.
You can do that if you want to. Now, you're huge on visual, physical stuff you can touch kind of design. There's something about the Drobo that really impresses you.
So here's what's so cool. I've got the 5D, and it's a good size but a compact unit. And what I love is that the faceplate to get into the thing is magnetic. So you just sort of grab it and pull, and it pops right off. And you're not sort of forcing the cover or anything like that. You're using no tools to get into it. Just pops right off, but it's nice and secure when it's on there. And then what you're faced with are all the drive bays for the unit. So I've got 3 2-terabyte drives in there right now, and I cannot tell you how easy it was to just push the drive in. There's a little latch, and I can slide over that latch to pull the drive right out. Could not be easier, and no tools required at all. So the more I use it and actually could hot swap those drives, I can just keep going and going by popping that cover off and loading and removing drives. It is absolutely perfect in its design in that sense.
And at the very least, on the sort of consumer-based models, you'll find that same sort of that same sort of ease, like that magnetic front you're talking about. I have the exact same thing in my Drobo Mini. So yeah, I mean, you're looking at those kinds of design cues and sort of workability across a lot of the line. And again, John mentioned the 5D. I mentioned the Drobo Mini. There are a number of sizes, depending on what your use case is going to be. Of course, with a number of sizes, there are a number of prices as well. But John, you actually have some news on the price.
Yep, it gets even better because Mission Log listeners can save $100 off of their purchase of a Drobo 5D, a 5N, or any 8-drive or 12-drive system at drobostore.com by using the discount code ML100. So you can save $100 off of your very own Drobo, drobostore.com, using the discount code ML100.
Not to correct you, I think you left out the Drobo Mini. That's mine. I love the Drobo Mini. Look, if I one day start doing video stuff or something like that, or, there may be a day where I'm going to need a bigger Drobo. For a lot of people, the Drobo Mini is a great way to get in because it just does fantastic on the backup thing. And it'll fit in your backpack. I mean, when I say it's mini, it really is mini. But I don't want to tell you that's the one you should get. What you should do is go to Actually, go to drobo.com to learn about the different models. And then go to drobostore.com and, pick out the one that's right for you and use offer code ML100 to get $100 off. And now, without further ado, it's time for John Champion's Trivia.
Here we go, Ken. Today's episode, Galaxy's Child, was written by Thomas Cartosian. Well, he wrote the story, and Maurice Hurley wrote the teleplay. So let's talk about Cartosian first. He wrote and created a TV series in 1980 about an all-male construction crew, except for one lady, called When the Whistle Blows, and it ran for one episode.
Wait, isn't When the Whistle Blows the name of the show in Ricky Gervais' Extras?
Oh, man, is it? Oh, man, you might be right.
I want to say that was the sitcom he developed that was all through season 2 of Extras.
Yeah. Are you having a laugh?
Is he having a laugh? Are you having a laugh? That's going to be in my head for a month now. Oh, man.
Yep, you're welcome. Now, after Star Trek, Cartosian's only other professional writing credit is Frozen Assets, a comedy about a sperm bank starring Shelley Long and Corbin Burnson. And yes, this is a return for Maurice Hurley, the next to the last time he will contribute to The Next Generation. Although Jerry Taylor and Ronald D. Moore gave this script a polish, they were not credited. It was directed by Heinrich Kolbe. We've talked about Kolbe's many contributions. We're about midway through his episode run on Next Generation, but then he'll be back for each of the remaining series for at least one episode, sometimes many more. Just in case you were wondering, Fungili, still not really a thing. I think we talked about that before. And the space creature, now this is neat. It's sort of a combination of effects. There was a fiberglass model built for many of the full-length shots, and there is a CGI model for most of the close-ups. If you're watching the Next Generation remastered episodes in HD, then you are seeing the original fiberglass model and the new but very painstakingly accurate CGI. That was necessary since the original resolution of those CG models would have been too low. But the new one gives more texture, more detail, and more realistic lighting. So about that fiberglass model, it was built by Tony Meininger. Well, his real name Frederick, but goes by Tony. He has his own model, and, well, he did actually have his own model and effects company in the early 80s, and he actually worked on the opening credit sequence of Next Generation. He would come back for more work on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and he actually worked on the 1997 film Titanic, but the more CGI overtook traditional model building, he closed his company. So, about that CGI, the CG for this episode was done by Rhythm and Hues, a CGI effects company, which then went on to do work for Deep Space Nine and also worked on the effects for Star Trek The Experience. Changing fortunes in a changing industry meant that after racking up just a huge number of effects credits in the 90s and 2000s, everything from the Babe movies to Superman Returns, The Night at the Museum, X-Men First Class, and on and on and on, company filed for bankruptcy in 2012. You probably remember the attention around this when Life of Pi, a movie they provided the effects for, was nominated for an Academy Award while the company was going under. It was kind of a controversial and very sad moment for followers of cool special effects. Now, in engineering in this episode, you can still see those little in-jokes in the Enterprise schematics. Look for the duck, the airplane, the car, etc., all scattered throughout. Ken, we have brand new Jefferies tubes, because you can't have Star Trek without people crawling through tubes. And there was an in-joke hidden in the original engineering log details that Dr. Brahms accesses, the last line of which read, "Tonight on HBO." But that was replaced with a new graphic, and we have much more detailed reference to engineers of the past on the 1701D, McDougall, Lynch, and our old friend Mr. Argyle.
Oh, whatever happened to him?
You miss him, right? Yeah. Now let's talk about guest stars very briefly. Jana Marie Hupp as Ensign Pavlik in engineering. You may have also seen her in Barton Fink for episodes of Hunter, Doctor, Knots Landing. She will be back in Trek a little later as a different character. We also have Lene Chapman playing Ensign Rager at the helm. She also appeared in the show Space Above and Beyond, directed by Veenrik Kolbe, and she will make a handful more appearances in Next Generation. And finally, we have Susan Gibney back as Dr. Leah Brahms. We met her before. And just as a reminder, Dr. Leah Brahms could have been back a third time, but the timing did not work out. She does come back for 2 more appearances, though, on Deep Space Nine, but as a different character.
From the makers of Speak and Spell, and You Do Not Know Jack, it is the Kentron 1000. Talk Star Trek. Talk Apple. Talk Star Trek. Additional content coming soon. The Kentron 1000. Sure to break the ice at parties.
Prologue. The Enterprise is doing its imitation of Planet Express, picking up science stuff at point A and taking it to point B. It'll also be hosting a ride-along this week. Dr. Leah Brahms. You remember Leah? Or the holographic simulation of Leah built by Geordi to help them get out of the man trap. It was the man trap, right? Captain Picard tells Geordi that Leah wants to see his exemplary work on the Enterprise, the modifications he's made to the ship she helped design. 2 more clueless individuals you're not likely to find on one screen. Geordi is excited that Leah's coming aboard. Really excited. Far too excited. The excitement continues in 10 Forward when Geordi tells Guinan how excited he is about Leah's arrival. Yes, he knows the Leah he knows was just a hologram, but she was built by the computer on knowledge of the real Dr. Brahms. Look, worst thing that happens, they'll be good friends. That does not seem likely when Dr. Brahms greets Geordi with the cold greeting, "So you're the one who's fouled up my engine designs." Act 1. Dr. Brahms is walking Geordi around engineering, telling him everything he's done wrong. He's telling her why it's not wrong. You don't know what it's like on the streets. In space. Their bickering is interrupted by a message for Dr. Brahms. While she takes that, we'll go to the bridge, where the Enterprise is tracking an unidentified energy of some sort. They'll check it out. Aware that he's been striking out so far, Geordi's like, "Dr. Brahms, why don't I show you around? Really let you see how I've modified your engines." She's receptive, and the tour begins. It's obvious that Geordi knows his stuff. Too much. He's made a modification that isn't supposed to happen until the next class of starships is built. Something he says he knows because, it just makes sense. Of course, he actually knows it from his dealings with hologram Leah Brahms. Things are getting tense again, and Geordi says, "Why don't we knock it off for now and meet later to talk things over? Say, dinner? My place? I'll make your favorite." Which will be a total coincidence and not a planned thing because I'm your cyber stalker. Dinner it is. Back on the bridge, the crew has found the source of the unidentified energy. It's a form of life that's never been seen before. They'll move to within a stone's throw of the thing, which arouses the thing's curiosity. Oh, look, it wants to be friends. At least that might be what coming towards us and shooting energy at us means. Captain Picard doesn't want to do anything to upset whatever it is, but the radiation levels are rising. When the ship cannot get away, Captain Picard is forced to fire on the life form. Minimum power, but minimum was too much. The Enterprise has killed the unidentified life form. Act 2. Captain Picard looks like he's about to quit. What just happened is exactly the opposite of what they're supposed to do. It's like the show open says, seek out new life and try not to kill it in the first 5 minutes. Counselor Troy assures the captain that he did everything by the book. What's more assuring, though, is the new energy reading they're getting from the alien being. We'll get back to that. Right now, time for Geordi and Leah's date. I mean, professional working dinner. Yeah, it's obvious. He thought it was a date. And they do start to have a bit of chemistry, ironically talking about engineering. She's not cold and humorless, and he gets that. She loves her work and feels a sense of ownership over starship engines, and he gets that. She's just not comfortable with people. And Geordi says, maybe you haven't met the right people. And Leah Brahms beats a hasty path out of Geordi's quarters. Back on the bridge, the energy form in the life form isn't the life form itself. It's more like a smaller energy reading inside it. The thing the ship fired upon was basically an expectant mother, protecting its unborn. Act 3. You know this thing they've never come across before? They're going to try to save the unborn young one through a great big space C-section. Worf's like, remember how the parent almost killed us? We should leave whatever it is, where it is, and get going. Thanks, says the captain, but we made this problem. We need to fix it. In engineering, the Brahms-LaForge tour of Geordi's modifications continues. She goes from being annoyed to impressed. And the ice between the two starts again to melt. She's so impressed with one of his modifications that she suggests he write it up for publication. He says writing's not his strong suit, but maybe they could write it up together since writing is a strong suit of hers. Okay, look, you seem to know a lot about me, says Dr. Brahms. A lot. Geordi confesses he's sort of studied her writings, her work, and yeah, okay, he likes her. Likes her. Wow. You know everything else about me. You didn't know I'm married? On the bridge, time for a galactic C-section. Congratulations! It's a thing. Geordi's back in 10 forward, complaining this time about Leah Brahms. She's cold, she's possessive of her work, and get this, Guinan, she's married. Guinan tells Geordi that it's his fault. He had this holodeck-infused fantasy, and then the real Leah waltzes in and has the audacity to be real. Back on the bridge, the baby thing seems fine, and the Enterprise is happy to leave this newborn by the side of the planet, apparently cool, not knowing whether it knows how to survive. The ship goes to continue on its way, but the only moving thing in the baby's field of vision is the Enterprise. It seems to have imprinted on the ship. It's following the Enterprise. Also, it's hungry. To satisfy its hunger, it's latched onto the Enterprise and is feeding off the ship's energy. Act 4. This thing is guzzling Enterprise energy. Engineering has stabilized the drain, but that'll only hold for a few hours. Dr. Brahms says they may be able to squeeze a little more time and energy out of the engines. Data says they may be able to figure out where the mother was headed and take the baby there. As for how to get the thing off the hull, Dr. Brahms says it's almost completely covering Shuttle Bay 2. Decompress that, and it might just blow the thing off. Everybody know what we're doing? Okay. Leah and Geordi are talking over modifications they might make to buy time and energy. Turns out Geordi's already implemented some of the suggestions that she has. Does he have like a record of every modification he's made? He says it's on the computer. Then he has to head to the bridge. Poring over Geordi's work, Leah seems impressed, but she needs to see it. Oh, here's Geordi's hologram program. It is at this moment that you will begin screaming at the television or whatever you're watching, please, someone stop her from going to the holodeck and seeing what Geordi has done. Your cries for help will go unanswered. Geordi runs into the holodeck and catches real Leah watching holodeck Leah from an old episode of Next Gen. The part where the holodeck Leah says, every time you touch this engine, you're touching me. Geordi says it's not as creepy as it seems, though oddly Dr. Brahms disagrees. She's outraged. She has been invaded, violated. She wants to know how far this has gone, though Geordi says it really was a professional collaboration. Come to think of it, Geordi says he should be mad at her. He's been nice. He's been patient. His crime? He offered her friendship. Let's check in on the space thing. It's growing like a weed and still draining the ship's energy. Data has figured out where it was headed. Some asteroid belt. Data thinks it could feed there. Cool. Let's blow it off the back of the ship and get out of here. Only the decompression trick doesn't work. If anything, the space thing is dug in harder. It's sucking more power, and it's whining, emitting a high-pitched radio transmission. Now Data is picking up similar radio transmissions coming from the asteroid belt. Oh, look! 3 more of the big ones! Headed right for the ship. And there's almost no power left for weapons. Act 5. Dr. Brahms has an idea on how to get the baby thing off the ship's back. What if they make the energy unpalatable? Geordi's right there with her. Change its resonance or frequency or smell or something. Technobabble. It just might work. And it does. The baby thing swims off to the adult things. The Enterprise leaves. And Geordi and Leah are talking over old times in 10 Forward. Remember that time you found the creepy hologram I made of you? That was funny. Leah apologizes for the way she behaved when she came aboard. And Geordi says he's just glad he got to know her. The real her. The two are on the verge of a comfortable silence when a message comes in for Dr. Brahms. That'll be her husband. She needs to take this. Leaving Geordi alone. The end.
And that's how he'll spend the rest of his life. Wait, too dark? Too dark?
Quite possibly. I don't know. It's or too soon, maybe, because we don't know how things are going to go. There's plenty of time for Leah Brahms to come back. Look, he started to make some headway there. I'm not saying that he should try to break up her marriage. I'm saying, anything can happen.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance. I am saying that by the end of the episode, I thought there might be a chance. Whether there should be or not, we can maybe talk about a little bit later.
I think we might.
I got to say, I had a hard time not putting this in the recap, but I felt like the recap was a little too flip. But I can't let it pass without saying Galactic C-Section is my Jefferson Starship cover band.
Oh, it's so perfect.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah, I love that idea.
I feel pretty good about it. Sadly, I only know 2 Jefferson Starship. Well, I know 1 Jefferson airplane and 1 Jefferson Starship.
That's all anybody really needs to know, actually.
Well, it's all most people do. Yeah. So it might be okay.
I know what 2 those are, by the way.
Oh, wait, 3.
Yeah? Oh, okay. Well then
I'll tell
me.
you, it's Sarah, it's White Rabbit, and of course it's We Built This City.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't escape that song when we were kids.
Yeah.
No matter how hard you tried.
See, Sarah was the third one that I did not know. But,
I figured that would be the one.
All right. It's a short set for the cover band. All right, Data. Data says, and you said it, we've never seen anything like this before. This weird thing, except for that time with Tin Man and maybe that other time with the giant amoeba and the immunity syndrome and all the other times,
Otherwise, no. I did not remember the whole Galaxy's Child part of it. I really thought that they had come across Gamtu again.
It kind of looks that way from a distance.
Which is, of course, how we start.
Right. But it is an interesting idea to kind of think about that a creature could evolve in the emptiness of space into a thing that has some emotional response, physical response, movement, all these abilities. I don't know how that would happen, but sure, interesting idea in the vacuum of space with no gravity to hold anything together. But very cool idea. Very cool idea.
Well, now, in fairness, though, it actually tends to congregate, feed, live around an asteroid belt, which I know we've talked about whether or not asteroid belts on television look anything like what asteroid belts actually would look like. But the asteroids would actually have a bit of gravity.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, not a tremendous amount, but it's not like it was born. I mean, I guess it was born in a vacuum, but I don't know. If only we knew some science people who might be able to answer that question. Maybe one day, John. Maybe one day. Yeah. Leah Brahms. What's her name again? Susan Gibney.
Yes.
Half Kirstie Alley and half Lilith Sternin Crane. Not half B.B. Newirth.
No.
I honestly thought she was more Lilith Crane in this episode than B.B. Newirth was in the last episode.
Well,
there was something.
Yeah.
I liked her a lot. I liked her a lot in this episode, but I always had a thing for Kirstie Alley and for B.B. Newirth and for Lilith Crane.
Yeah, right.
It really makes sense that I would have a thing for her in this.
Well, for sure, there's something much more complex about her meeting her for real than meeting the holodeck version of her. So
why should that be?
Well, that's pretty great for the actor to be able to play. That there are a lot more facets to the character than just the short introduction we were given to her. I was really pleased to see in Geordi's quarters, first of all, nice casual off-duty wear for him. But soft jazz still exists in the future.
Yeah.
And then so does Brahms, of course, and so does classical guitar, of course, because everything in the future is classical. This is kind of the conversation that we started to have a few episodes ago, but then didn't really clarify or go all the way with that conversation, that it was brought up to me that, where are the artists who are creating new things? Because we always reference something from the past, and in this case, it's Geordi just tuning into, light radio of the 1980s. Just put on soft jazz. I don't know what soft jazz is because I'm 300 years removed from it, but just put on some soft jazz. I also wondered if Geordi was going to cook or was he going to replicate?
Who was the woman that Riker ended up killing?
Yuta.
I know there have been a few. Yuta, yes. Wasn't
Yuta.
Now, was Yuta going to cook, or did Riker not have her program the replicator to make him something nice? I'm given to understand that there's a little. It's not cooking in the Emerald Lagasse, bam, kind of Paula Deen, start with a pound of butter.
Yeah.
Cooking. But I'm given to understand that any idiot can program scrambled eggs.
Well,
but
unless you're Riker and you make terrible eggs.
He would make them, right. I'm given to understand that there's a little artistry in how you program the stuff. Sort of like a good coder, maybe.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. See, I got the impression that Yuta was going to cook based on the ingredients that Riker would replicate. So he would say, replicate, a half a stick of butter, replicate some flour, replicate that, and now you get to cooking. It's kind of, actually, you said it's not like Emerald Lagasse, but I do remember a show that Tony Bourdain hosted one time, and he was in India, and he had been invited to this just fabulous palace, just incredible looking place, and it was some very wealthy, like a royal family or some government official, just incredibly wealthy, and he was going to cook a traditional dish for Tony Bourdain. And what I loved about it is they spent the whole time sitting outside in this incredible location, and basically everything who worked for this guy brought him all the ingredients pre-prepared, like pre-chopped, ready to go. So he literally just sat there. They would bring him something like, these are onions. Here, I'll throw these in the big pot, and now we're cooking onions. So he literally had to do nothing except combine foods and then watch them cook. I think that's a great way to cook, and that's how replicating cooking in the future, I think, will work. Maybe that's the way to go.
All right.
On Geordi's table, space napkins. I hope you noticed those. But
I'm against it.
You're against space napkins? Yeah.
I'm absolutely against space napkins. I'm okay with a space fork, space spoon, space glass. I'm okay with all that stuff. If you've ever been to prom, lame is not like the softest fabric.
No,
and you don't want to wipe your mouth with anything with sequins on it either.
No.
I'm against space napkins. Good linen napkins. That's what you want in space.
Yeah,
Go for the
napkins,
classics.
Yeah, space napkins would be hard to clean. They would also be difficult to use. We didn't see space forks, but we did see space spoons.
Yeah.
So that was good to see those make a return. I do want to say something about Riker. The B plot is very much a B plot here, and I feel like the two are very separated until you get to a moment where they can finally come together. So we don't get a lot of Riker in this, but boy, does Jonathan Frakes make the most of that reaction about the alien baby.
Yeah, he does. I'm not sure why it pleased him quite as much as it did.
Just a big, goofy Riker grin.
Now, was that when they said it was a baby, or was that when they said that he thinks we're its mother?
That was when they said that Junior thinks that the Enterprise is its mother. Yeah.
Yeah. That is the time where Riker would have like a big, goofy grin like that.
Right. Played
perfectly. He loves to play like for like 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. Like he hears something like that and he's like, "That's awesome." Oh wait, I'm first officer of the starship.
Right.
But I do love those moments because it's like you see like, wow, I can still be impressed. But now I got to go back to being impressive. Speaking of impressing, should Geordi not warn the captain when he's taking the warp core offline?
As the engineer, it's his prerogative.
Should he? There are things that I wonder about. Like, we don't always know what's happening on the bridge when we're down in engineering, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't know, for example, they may need to go to warp very soon. Mm-hmm. I love it, like, towards the end where he's walking around, he's talking to Ensign What's-Her-Name down in engineering. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, this better happen or we're not going to get Junior off our back. And I just wanted her to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because she hasn't been privy to the whole Junior thing. Even if she knows that there's a space whatever on the back of the Enterprise. By the way, I did have a big goofy Riker grin myself when I thought, what if they could never get this off the back of the Enterprise? And what if like 5 years from now, there's like a giant thing on the back of the Enterprise and it pulls up next to an Excelsior class ship and the Excelsior class ship's over and like you got something right there. No, other side. Like he doesn't even know. Okay, so I'm sorry, Geordi. All right, and warning the captain about taking the whole thing offline. Luckily, when Picard wants to go to warp, there's radioactive interference.
Right.
So Geordi can say to the captain, sorry, Captain, there's too much interference, rather than saying, sorry, Captain, I took the warp core offline to impress a girl.
It looks like Geordi is in for a pessimistic message this week. Be careful what you wish for.
So I kind of like to start with the B plot today because I feel like there maybe is more to talk about in the A plot.
Okay. There's stuff to talk about in the B plot too, though.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. But I think we need to kind of start backwards and work our way up to the A plot. There's something about this that I really love. I love that we have such a genuine, solemn reaction from Picard about killing the mother creature. You said so long ago, and you're absolutely right, that it's kind of redundant to keep talking about what a good actor Patrick Stewart is. Of course he is. And of course he's great in this role. And of course we can't picture the show without him. But to just let the camera linger on his reaction without a lot of dialogue, saying that they are upset, just feeling it, at particularly the end of that commercial break, or the beginning of that commercial break, at the end of the act when that happens, is incredibly powerful stuff. And that whole plot line about that creature, I feel like, sums up so much about what Star Trek values. The opportunity to learn and discover, the preciousness with which it sees life, our responsibility to our environment, all of those ideas are tied up in this plot line. His exact line at the moment that we come back, he says, we're out here to explore, to make contact with other life forms, to establish peaceful relations, but not to interfere, and absolutely not to destroy. And yet, look at what we have just done. Tremendous. It's a great line, and it's delivered fantastically by Patrick Stewart. And like I said, I feel like it says so much about the ideas and ideals of Star Trek. Now, Picard was actually going to go to his ready room after this and take a moment. I imagine just take a moment to himself and leave everyone else on the bridge to do what exactly? To think about it themselves, to speculate about his mental state. I'm not exactly sure. But all of that was really interesting to speculate about.
It was, and yes, turning over control of the bridge to Riker. I mean, what did I say in the recap? It looks like Picard wants to quit.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, you're right. It is redundant to keep saying what a good actor Patrick Stewart is. But yeah, I really felt, his hurt in that.
Yeah.
And I think I'm glad that they picked up the energy reading so that we didn't have to have him wallow in it too long. He actually said enough in that scene. He actually said enough with his acting in that scene as well. I mean, we know how bad this is going to be. Yeah. Or how bad this could have been for him had they not been able to salvage it somehow. Of course, he may still have to come to grips with the fact that, I did kill that thing. Oh, but there are others. There are at least 4 more.
Sure, right.
So maybe it's not so bad. Here's the question that I have, though. and this is bad, but I don't care. How does Picard feel like he lived up to his responsibility in delivering the space baby without even taking a moment to look after it? I mean, he's gotten it out of the parent organism, and that's fantastic. It now has a much better chance of surviving. But I don't see how his work is even close to done on so many levels. And that's okay. So we're a scientific expedition, or we have a science team, and there's a baby one of these now, and we've never studied an adult one, but at least we have a baby one to study. So maybe we watch it for a little bit. But more than that, make sure the thing can eat. You know, I mean, make sure it starts feeding. And if you have to watch it die while you're trying to figure out and failing to figure out how to make sure it survives, okay, you have to do that because you literally asked for it by making sure it could live. Right? I mean, to demand that this thing be born and then to not think for a moment about what to do for it once it's actually born, you have not done anything any favors at that point. I mean, I don't know enough about wildlife, but I think if a deer is born, it may be up and walking in a few hours, but it hangs out with its parent for quite a while, right? Whales spend years with their mother. I hear that people actually spend a decent amount of time with their parents. I know. Some do. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I felt kind of weird about the fact that even Riker's like, we're leaving. And Picard's like, oh, we've done everything we can. Well, based on what? Out of curiosity, based on what do you say that? Maybe you can save your own conscience, by saying, well, I did what I could. But I was really surprised that he was like, thank goodness that's fine. Gotta go.
Maybe the way that thing needs to live is, you know, the mother gives birth somewhere near an interesting looking planet, and they just wait for the next starship to come by to get all the energy they can off of that ship.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, maybe that's the way it has to survive.
It was just very strange to me that there was absolutely no consideration of, okay, so what do we do now? I mean, seriously, had that thing not chased them and latched onto the ship, Picard's report would have been like, yes, we killed the mom, which is kind of a drag, but we let the kid be born, which is great, and
then we left.
Probably everything's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They are making at least a very big assumption that maybe there were more out there near enough by to come rescue it, that maybe the mother had gone to that specific place to give birth to the young because there was a reason for it that others would be there. But they don't know. They don't know. And actually, I'm surprised that we heard very little out of Deanna this whole episode.
Well, nobody asked her, like, do you feel anything? Do you get anything?
Right.
Is there anything here? Yeah.
Now, granted, it may have all been very obvious. It may have been her saying, "Oh, yeah, that's a mother," and "Oh, yeah, that's the offspring." And
well, except it wasn't obvious. It's not until they think they've killed it. Well, they have killed it. It's not until they pick up the smaller, weaker energy signature that they say that. So, I mean, if she had any feeling of it's feeling protective or it's feeling scared or anything, she kept it to herself.
She did.
But maybe she just doesn't feel it in the same way. I mean, they can't read Ferengi. No, it's not Ferengi. What can they not read?
Yeah, no, Ferengi.
Okay. Yeah, Beta Z can't read Ferengi, so maybe she can't read this thing either. Well, it would help in your business dealings with them, which could be many.
Yeah, very true. All right, so let's talk about that A-plot.
Okay.
The Geordi and Leah Brahms plot.
Oh, that A-plot. I'm sorry.
That A-plot, yeah. So, I mean, first off, we have to ask ourselves, what are the ethics around what Geordi has done and is doing with this hologram? Very interesting idea that they introduced it so long ago and then came back to give that story some payoff. I was asking myself, is it his fault that he kind of sort of fell in love with this hologram, Dr. Brahms, which really is the Enterprise computer?
Right. Didn't we actually talk about that possibility that the Enterprise computer is in love with Geordi?
We did quite a bit.
Yeah.
And should Dr. Brahms know that? Seeing her intimate knowledge of the Enterprise and maybe knows a thing or two about the Enterprise computer, or at least the way that Starfleet computers work.
She knows engines, though. I don't think anybody's seen her around the Daystrom Institute.
True, very true, very true. So that might be a long, difficult conversation to have. No, see, it looks like you, but it's not really you. But yeah, that may not have gone very far. But I did wonder about that, because there is that other level there, that it is technically the Enterprise computer creating that and living through that hologram. But it certainly looks enough like Leah Brahms that Geordi was able to fall in love with her. It is his fault that he's behaving creepily. But then, if we're going to cut him any slack at all, we have to say that Geordi is the guy who, from the beginning, has had trouble with women.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfair that this whole plot line happened with Geordi. I kept thinking this would have been amazing with Wesley. We got very little of the maturation of Wesley Crusher.
Yeah.
Because we're done with him, and he's 18 years old and going off to the academy. And we got a little bit of that with the Dauphin. Just a little taste of that. But it wasn't enough. Now imagine if this plot line had introduced itself a year ago and then carried out had Wesley stayed around for another year or two. I think that would have been a fascinating thing, because here's a kid who is actually trying to figure out what it means to be in love and date somebody, to fall in love. With Geordi, it's a little more difficult, because he is older, he is more mature. He is looked up to by a kid like Wesley. He is Data's best friend. They're all kind of learning from him anyway. So I thought that was a missed opportunity.
I don't know, though, because he's a gearhead, right? I mean, he's a nerd. Sure. He's an engineer. And I'm not saying that all engineers are that, but remember the problems that Scotty had with women? Mm-hmm. It's not until Star Trek V that he actually ends up with a girl, and then everybody's like, yeah, no, that was wrong. Go back. No. I don't know. I mean, the problem with, and this is weird because we're doing something we don't normally do, which is trying to decide how an episode of Star Trek should have been written, like which character, whatever.
Sure.
If they had written it for Wesley, then it would have been written as puppy love. If they had written it for Wesley, then it still would have been written as a teenager, even though he's 18. Especially if it happened a year ago, because it would have been 16 or 17, and it'd be, oh, kids. I kind of like the fact that this is a full-grown man. This is an adult male who, I don't want to say should know better, because I don't know where we're going to end up on the whole whether he did anything wrong thing.
Yeah.
But he should be sort of clued into why somebody might not be overjoyed by finding herself on the holodeck saying things like, when you touch that part of this thing, you're touching this part of this thing. You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of, it is decidedly creepy.
Well, I agree with you. Like, there's something about this that we can get to an extent. Geordi is an engineering nerd. He's thrown himself into his work. That's fine. Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
But he does actually seem to get along okay with everybody else anyway.
Not women. I mean, he has women friends, but the second he tries to date somebody, it just doesn't go well at all. Except for, was it Henshaw?
Yeah.
Who was suddenly putting the moves on him, but I can't remember why that ended up not being a thing anymore.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing that didn't play out. So we introduced some interesting ideas. At least we've got Guinan there to offer a little bit of guidance, and it is fun to hear talk about the visor, the other visor, and she has a pretty interesting, provocative line here, saying she's probably done the most horrific thing one person can do to another, not live up to their expectations. Mm-hmm. So it does put the onus on Geordi exactly where it belongs. But to me, I think that the creepiest thing Geordi does for the whole episode is not fantasizing about Leah or even just having all of this personal information about her. Yeah, that's a little weird, but honestly, I think the creepiest thing here is the moment that he says, I offered you friendship, and then makes her feel bad about it. Mm-hmm. That hurts.
I could not decide, and again, I think we still need to discuss whether or not what he did on the holodeck was right or wrong. I can't decide whether she is the victim of anything here, but the immediate thing I thought of was he's victimizing the victim. He's turning the victim into the bad guy. He's accusing the victim. in this situation, and she takes it. It reminded me of, I wish I had actually seen it now, because I know enough to know that it should remind me of this, but I don't know enough to actually be able to draw parallels. The Taming of the Shrew leapt to mind, which I've read a little bit about just in preparing for this episode, and it turns out a lot of people have problems with The Taming of the Shrew.
Right.
And that kind of felt like what it was here. It's like she comes in and she's an ice queen, and then they find a place to sort of meet intellectually, and in finding a place to meet intellectually, they sort of actually seem to find a place to meet personally. And then, she finds out what she finds out. Now, I do have to ask about whether what he was doing on the holodeck was right or wrong. I mean, we've had the whole thing with Reg Barclay, right?
Yeah.
Where Troy says, well, this is healthy. And then, of course, Troy sees herself and she's like, oh, this is not healthy,
Right.
We all have... I mean, he got caught. I mean, this is sort of a terrible thing to say, but he got caught. We all have imaginations. I have fallen in love with so many people I've never met. I have fallen in love with people I've barely met. I mean, our imaginations run wild with us, or run away from us. Now, if I built a replica of someone that I fall in love with and started carrying them around the house with me, that crosses the line into really freaking creepy. But if I could just call up a computer and say, hey, make one of those for me and have it follow me around the house. Okay, well, now that's creepy. But I'm trying to figure out where the line is exactly. Because in your imagination, you can run away with people all day long.
Sure.
I mean, does this get creepy in the fact that he has these thoughts? Does it get creepy in the fact that these thoughts are made manifest, although making it manifest is as easy as, Worf making Skeletor manifest to fight on the holodeck? Or is the problem just that she found out?
Like I said, I think we have to give Geordi a little bit of slack here. He came up with a brilliant idea to think his way out of a problem, which was to use the resources he is given on the Enterprise to make it relatable. And I get that. When I learn something, I'm much better off learning from a person that I can talk to and physically work with, rather than just reading a manual.
Sure.
So absolutely great. Now, maybe the Enterprise computer is a bit to blame here for adding on that layer of personal detail that Geordi asked for.
Yeah, he did. That's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah. He asked for someone to be able to talk to, but the decision to make that maybe flirtatious was not necessarily his. To Geordi's credit, as far as we know, he has not been using that program since then.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. I don't... again, if he created a separate program where he's meeting with holographic Dr. Leah Brahms on the same set where Riker met Minuet...
Yeah.
Well, do we blame Riker? Well, I don't think we can there either.
Well, there's literally nothing to blame Riker for, though, because Minuet's not a person. I mean, Minuet is a construct. And it turns out that it was being run by the Binars, but I mean, it's sort of like the woman that Data was dancing with in Data's day.
Yeah.
There's no... I mean, she does say that she's been invaded, that she's been violated. And I get why she feels that way. I'm trying to figure out if she actually has been.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's a really tough gray area. And like I said, I don't think the fact that he has done this or he has developed some misplaced feelings there, I don't think those are the things you can blame him for. I think what you can blame him for is how he reacts when she actually shows up and how he plays this out when he should know better, and then how he makes her feel awful by, like you said, victimizing the victim here.
Yeah.
It's those are all the terrible things about what's happened. Otherwise, we just say, okay, LaForge is a step away from being Reg Barclay, which, man.
He might be a step beyond Reg Barclay, honestly.
Which really makes you reread that episode when LaForge is just, this guy, he's terrible to work with. Yeah, granted, Reg isn't showing up for work, but what Reg is doing in his own time is essentially what you're doing in your own time, okay?
In fairness, though, I mean, Geordi actually cops to that with Reg.
Yeah,
hey,
sure,
I get how the holodeck can be. I even fell in love there one time.
Yeah.
I mean, and he can only be talking about Leah Brahms, I think. Gotta give props to the writers, by the way. This has been a thread that you didn't necessarily expect to come back, or you wouldn't have expected to come back. Like, I've always known, like, from the time that we saw her earlier in the run, I've known that she was going to come back, but it wasn't necessarily a given that she was going to. And yet they have sort of dropped in every now and then. It's interesting how real fantasy can be in the 24th century, and of course in real life as well. I mean, I said earlier, I fall in love with people I've never met before, and I stand by that statement.
Well, it is an interesting idea to sort of speculate, to say, well, how will people meet and date in the 24th century anyway, particularly when you're on a starship and you've only got 1,000 people and you're away for years and years. We've already talked about how in this workplace, at least, they're very relaxed about any sort of non-fraternization. You know, they don't really seem to care. It's nobody's business.
Right.
I've had this discussion with friends relatively recently to say that, okay, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, well, let's just say 5, but as of recording now, I feel like the idea that there were online dating sites and dating apps, it was treated as so weird by the media at large. And I feel like now we've sort of arrived at a place where you almost have to say, well, how else are you going to meet people? Of course, this is the way that people meet each other now, because you're either working or maybe you're hanging out with a small circle of friends. But it seems that the technology is going to the technology and sort of the social interaction they're both going to evolve to sort of meet each other. So maybe in the 24th century, this is a part of dating, that you're meeting people at work, and maybe the holodeck can be used as a way to teach a little socialization. Seems a little weird to us, but maybe there's something there.
Well, if you were learning socialization, that would be one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm having trouble drawing the line between the two things that you're saying, honestly. But go for it, man.
Yeah. Fair enough. I did wonder if there's another layer here about Leah Brahms being a woman in the workplace, feeling like she has to be cold and humorless. And those were her words to say that she comes into a situation putting on this armor. And that's something that you kind of hear now about some women in the workplace feeling like they have to do this or else they'll get walked all over, or so they won't have respect. And that's something that I hoped would have changed by the 24th century. And maybe it just is her. It's not every woman in the 24th century. But I thought that was an interesting moment to have there, because you kind of hoped that wouldn't be the case.
For me, it felt like this was a her thing. This was, I mean, this goes back to Scotty and Geordi. I mean, they're all engineers. And I'm not, look, it's not just about engineers. I have a friend who has he's actually written for film, and he doesn't write anymore. And the reason he doesn't write anymore is because when he would write, he went away. He would not see people. He would not go out. There would be days where he wouldn't eat. He wouldn't do anything but that. He became very work focused. This can be true of anybody for any number of reasons. So I'm not just saying, nerds. I'm not just saying engineers. She is very much about her work and is not so much comfortable with everything else. That was the feeling I got off this. There's sexism in this episode. Okay, there is. Yeah. But I didn't feel like this was that. I felt like this was an engineer saying, you know what really makes me happy is tinkering with things. Or you know what really makes me happy is designing things or building things. What really makes me unhappy is people. I've been that. Not the designing and building, but I mean, it's not misanthropic even. It's just more like I'm comfortable with what I'm comfortable with, and people is not that. And so that was sort of the sense I got from that. I didn't feel like that was a sexist thing in this episode. But there were others.
This episode makes me want ice cream. My Oklahoma people know exactly what I am talking about, and why.
Galaxy's Child. It's kind of far out, man. Yeah, we talked a couple of weeks ago, you and I, a few weeks ago actually, about putting out playlists. Music playlists with every episode. Every time I talked about Galaxy's Child, all I've got is Moon Age Daydream. Moon Age Daydream is playing in my head over and over again all week long. Because I knew we were going to talk about Galaxy's Child.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Messages, morals, and meaning, sir. What are we doing? Actually, I guess we start with, does this episode hold up? This Galaxy's Child episode.
You know, it's always interesting to me when we get email from our listeners who have very strong feelings about a particular episode. And we've gone through a couple just recently where, you know, maybe you and I, we found that they weren't as favorite to us as they are to other people. And people are sort of, you know, very indignant about it. They're like, no, how could you possibly not love this episode the same amount that I love an episode? And you know, those are interesting, but a lot of it's just subjective and doesn't really matter. You know, I feel like this episode is one where we got a lot of preemptive email and commentary of people just kind of tearing it apart, just saying, oh, it's that one where Geordi's a creep and he does this, and boy, you're gonna have a tough time getting through this one. And I think that there's a lot more to it than that. I think this episode takes a lot of heat purely because of the discomfort we feel about and for Geordi. But I think, and again, this is fiction, it's perfectly fair to explore those ideas here and do it kind of to the depth that they do it here. Like I said, we can blame Geordi for a lot of things, but I think we do this episode a disservice if we just say, well, he's a creep. We don't like to see him as a creep, so let's move on. I think there's a lot to mine there, and I think it makes for a pretty interesting A plot for this episode. And I think the B plot is very good, too. The things that I responded to in it were the treatment of making this serious and intimate. And that plays very well, primarily because of the acting, but I think the writing there is pretty good too. So overall, I was, you know, maybe my expectations had been lowered by reading what people were saying about it, but I think it all actually plays out pretty well. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't moments in it that make you question, but I think overall it plays out pretty well as an episode, and I think it holds up. So how about you?
My level of discomfort with this episode was so great the first time I watched it, because I mean, not the first time I watched it, but the first time I watched it for this, for us to do this, that I hated it. I hated the A plot. I hated the B plot. I hated the whole thing. I have been dreading this episode since the last time we met Leah on the holodeck, right?
Wow.
Having to watch it more than one time, though, it's an okay episode. It might even be a good episode. I'm not sure, because there's a lot of stuff in it that I disagree with. But it's a better episode than I remembered. I certainly wouldn't blame anybody listening to Mission Log if they did not watch this episode getting ready for this, because I was dreading watching it, and I hated it as much as I thought I was going to hate it the first time I watched it. But having to watch it again, it's better. And so I would say, you know, watch it, have a snack, and then watch it a second time. Your level of discomfort, because you've gone through the difficult part. And I think part of the reason it's so difficult is because I'm not the only person who's had a crush on somebody I didn't know. You're not the only person who's done that. Geordi's not the only person who's done that. We have all been where Geordi is to an extent. We have all had our hearts broken, not because somebody broke our hearts, but because somebody turned out not to be who we thought they were going to be.
Right.
And you see Geordi walking into that, and you're just like, I mean, it's like he left his journal laying out, you know, on
right.
on the, what's that, not Chiron Beta Prime. Oh, there's a song by Jonathan Colton where he's like, yeah, so I wrote an anonymous letter to a girl, and it turns out she's not as stupid as I thought, and so she knows it was me. I mean, we've all had these embarrassing moments, and that's what makes it so just absolutely difficult to watch. Now, on second watching, there are other things that make it difficult to watch. Picard, just like, you know, oh, it's a baby. Yay! Lay it down and walk away. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Is that really what we're going to do? I still don't know whether we decided what Geordi was doing on the holodeck was wrong, but definitely the way he treats Leah afterwards is wrong. Now,
yes,
you were writing this episode earlier saying if it had been Wesley, it would have been better. Here's how I would write this episode, as long as we're going to do that. Because I think there's stuff here to be salvaged. They could have met on how weird they are with people. He actually might have been able to say to her, I don't even want to look at you. I am so embarrassed.
Right.
Here's the one thing that I could say, and here's how it could happen, or how I can say it happen. In fact, if you want to bring in the whole thing, how she should know how holodecks work and how the Enterprise computer works, it could even end up being sort of a weird praise of the work that she does. But when he says, I've been nothing but nice to you. Okay, and creepy. But no, we're not even talking about creepy. Let's just talk about how nice I've been and you've been mean. And then when she's like, oh, yeah, you're right. I was kind of a jerk. No, you were you and he was creepy. And that, I don't know if that's a sexist thing necessarily, except I couldn't help but think of The Taming of the Shrew at that point.
Sure.
Where it's like, oh, this woman is, she's got all kinds of ideas. And we just need to bring her down a peg until we're friends. That said, I mean, if you can ignore that part, which is difficult, I like the almost intimacy that they have at the end. I mean, it ends up in an okay place. I don't like how it got there. I don't like the fact that he calls her to the carpet for anything, because honestly, she should have gone straight to the captain and complained. And the captain probably should have been like, okay, seriously, nobody on the holodeck for a few weeks, okay? Has anybody seen Barclay? Nobody on the holodeck for a few. I want you all to think about what you've done. But it's a better episode than I thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I land on it, too. That ending scene should have actually occurred earlier, before Geordi dug himself further and further into that hole. You know, because you can't really just have the slap on the back and the smile and the freeze frame and run the credits.
Except it shows redemption. That's the thing. I mean, in Act 5, when they're able to actually get past what has happened, and they're able to actually start working together, and they're able to actually meet back at that place, I mean, it does show salvation. It does show redemption of the relationship. It does show redemption of Geordi's reprehensible behavior. Unfortunately, it's actually being presented to us as her recovering from her reprehensible behavior, which was not reprehensible at all.
Well, I would say that's the thing. She doesn't owe him an apology.
No, she does not.
Yeah, you know. So I think there was another way to play this out. Again, it is ridiculous that we would say, well, here's how it should have been written, you know. But
and yet that actually speaks to how good the episode is, because you and I don't usually do that.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true.
There is actually a lot of wonderful here, wrapped, unfortunately, in a couple of really bad messaging moments.
Yeah. Oh, okay, well, then let's talk about messages.
Okay.
So let's figure out what we actually can pull away from this. I think, you know, to me, clearly there's the one about not confusing fantasy and reality. Sure. Of course that's there. And of course that's something that we have to do. It's not just for our love lives, but it's for many other places in our lives. Maybe a side note to that is don't meet your heroes. Doesn't that apply to everyone? Maybe to Star Trek fans too.
I like meeting my heroes.
Well, but sometimes you don't.
Well, sometimes you don't, but sometimes you do.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you do. And in this case, Geordi had this totally bizarre idea of who his hero or his object of affection was here. And that's, boy, he could have gone his whole life and not met her, and that would have been fine.
Yeah.
And maybe for Leah, you know, don't walk in with a chip on your shoulder. Everyone is here to learn. And she is causing a disservice to herself by putting on this armor and by not hearing out Geordi to begin with. Now Geordi obviously is pushing this to a place that is wrong and uncomfortable, but if Leah Brahms is guilty of anything, it's not stopping for a moment to have a little human understanding early on to begin with. By the time Geordi has dug this so deep and he's acting like a jerk, like I said, at the end, she doesn't owe him anything. She doesn't owe him an apology at all. But if there's anything to learn from her, it's don't come in like you own the place. What about you?
There's no substitute for experience. Geordi knows Leia in theory. Leia knows starship engines in theory. And both are great starting points, but both leave a lot to not know.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's a necessary symbiosis to what they're doing. I couldn't help thinking of when I worked in radio and television. Talent and sales hate each other. I don't know if that's always true, but every place I ever worked, talent and sales, like they really had nothing good to say about the other. Each seemed to think that they could do the thing without the other one. And, they've tried it in radio. Sales won, which is why nobody I know listens to radio anymore, because there's no personality to it. It needed both, in my opinion, but that's, my rant on radio, which we can do some other time. There's a real tension between Leia designing ships and Geordi living and working on ships, but obviously the two are necessary. And, of course, they work better together. They're able to get out of, whether it be holodeck Leia Brahms getting out of, the problem they got out of before, or if it's, the two real ones working together to get rid of Galaxy's Child. Once they actually work together and go ahead and do that, then things are better. So those are a couple of messages that I picked up, despite the taming of the shrew part.
Fair enough. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. You can find out more at roddenberry.com. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, check out Trek FM. That's trek.fm. And for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
Next week, Night Terrors.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Are you kidding me? They did not say it. Not even once. After months of this, they are not even going to say it once? Booby trap. 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 I have to do everything. End transmission.